Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Today is a very special day. It's day one, or episode one, of the Severn Way. I'm here in Llandrillos in Wales, in Paris in fact, in mid-Wales. And on this first video, we're looking for the source of the River Severn, or as it's called in Wales, Hafren. Now what I'm decided to do on this epic journey, the 220 or so miles, nobody seems to know the exact number of the Severn Way. It's slightly longer than the actual river itself because you can't get right close to it, as I'll explain as we go on. I'll be telling you about this fantastic river here in Wales and England. Just a proviso to say that obviously I'm clearly not in West Country Wanderings area. This is the furthest north and the furthest west I've been on the channel. I don't usually cover Wales at all because, well, there's plenty of other YouTubers that cover Wales, and the only reason I'm here is to start the adventure. I'm going to be doing the entire way, all of the Severn Way, from here, from where it starts. Well, a few miles from here, about 6 miles from the source where I'm standing at the moment. And I'll be going all the way down towards the city of Bristol. In fact, we'll be going through a lot of Paris, then we'll be heading into England, into the county of Shropshire, in fact, heading across to Shrewsbury, then down into more familiar territory when I get into Worcestershire, of course, and then heading south through Gloucestershire, South Gloucestershire, and finally into the city of Bristol. So why not join me here on West Country Wanderings? Don't know how many videos they're going to be till we get to the end, but I'll keep going. There'll be other content as well, but why not join me for this epic explore along the mighty River Severn. So I've now come just 7 miles to the west of the town of Llandrillos. I've come to the car park at Liddy Brynich, I think that's how you pronounce it. Put in a photograph around about now of the entrance to the car park so you can see where it's a very narrow road from the town, though it's pretty quiet, although I have to say the car park here is quite full. We're here not quite at Jubilee weekend. Jubilee weekend starts on Thursday. I can't remember what date that is. The 2nd of June. That's so Thursday and Friday, the bank holidays or Jubilee weekend, but I think it's now half term, so there's a few people obviously holidaying in and around central Wales. But the roads from where I live, absolutely fantastic. I've set off on a Sunday morning, so it's been nice and really quiet, really nice drive. About 2.5, well, I stopped in Llandrillos, as you saw, I did a piece to camera there, and we're here. Yeah, so 2.5, 3 hours later, we're here and about to set off looking for the source of the River Severn. So I'm going to head up. This is slightly unusual on this first episode of the Severn Way, because I'm starting off looking for the source. Everything else will be heading firstly in an easterly direction and then in a southerly direction when we get to Shrewsbury, when the river decides to then make its way south. I'll tell you more about that. There's a little fable about that. It's really interesting. I'll tell you about that when we get up to the top of Plymlimon. Plymlimon is the mountain where the river rises. It's also the source of the River Wye, and they go off in a slightly different direction and they completely diverge. I'll tell you more about that as well as we make our journey further along, looking for the source of the River Severn here in Wales. So this is the river, this is our river, the River Severn or Hafren. And I'll explain how it comes to that Welsh name later on in this episode, and also about Sabrina as well. That way takes you to Severn Break Its Neck. It sounds a slightly gruesome name. We will be doing that probably in video 2, which is where there is a waterfall. But we're heading upstream, probably the only time, well, it will be the only time in this series on the Severn Way, we're heading up the river, not down the river, to find the source of the River Severn. Yes, it's such a strange thing to be walking by the River Severn looking like this. Because I live in Gloucestershire and I trek up to Worcestershire frequency, I'm kind of more used to the Severn between Worcester down to the Bristol Channel, where it's a very wide, turbulent river. But here, it's nothing little more than a stream, although surprisingly it is still quite fast flowing, since we're only about 4 to 5 miles or so from the source of the river. So much of this video, or this first part 1 going up to the source of the River Severn, will be in Hafren Forest. Hafren, of course, is the other name for the Welsh name for the River Severn. And it is used, it was actually planted, it's coniferous, so it's not natural forest, and it was planted in the early 1920s. Although when they cut the trees down nowadays, they are replacing it with deciduous woodland, which is good to know. Now the sign back there says allow 4 to 4.5 hours to get to the source here today. Of course it'll be less than that coming back because it'll be downhill. Now, in terms of guides and maps and that sort of thing for research, I've got quite a few actually. I was actually given this one. It's a Cicerone guide, you can see it there. I'll put a link in the bottom of the video. Severn Way by Terry Marsh. Really useful book. I used the Cicerone guide when I did the Cotswold Way last year. So as well as this guidebook, I've also got an excellent book just called Severn by the Logiston Press. They're based in Herefordshire. And that gives you really good information about the entire river in terms of its history, the battles that were fought, the bridges, the industry, the geography, etc. So I've been using some background reading in that. I'll be bringing out some extracts from that book just to highlight and give you some background to this magnificent river here in Wales. As well as that, of course, there is another guide I picked up second hand. I think it was published by the various councils that Severn runs through. I'll put a description of that, and almost certainly that's now out of print. Came out about 23 years ago. That's a really good, well put together guide as well, with nice foldable. It's got a spring leaf, I think that's the technical term, I'm not sure. So when you open it up, it stays flat, which is really useful. So I got that in my rucksack, and of course I've got my trusty OS map. Probably won't need that so much today because it's quite a straightforward route. But as we get onto the other videos and the other days when we're walking by the Severn, the route becomes less obvious because it doesn't always follow the River Severn. That may sound a bit strange, but yeah, just a bit like the old Thames and Severn Canal back in Gloucestershire. And other bits and pieces as well. There are rights issues with who owns the land next to the River Severn, and you can't actually walk along it all of the way. But we will be walking through magnificent scenery, so the OS map, of course, will be really, really useful in those places. Now, in terms of the landscape here and the West Country Wanderings area that I cover, of course, my channel, the landscape here is more akin to Dartmoor. Although I have touched on Dartmoor, I haven't done that much there. I will be doing some. But it is more, if you are familiar with Dartmoor and Exmoor and those type of national parks, the landscape here is kind of similar to that. I've seen similar places in Dartmoor following the river here. But you're probably thinking, what made me decide to go along the River Severn, or the Severn Way, should I say? Well, part of it was looking for something, a route to do. I wanted to get my teeth into a real project. Though obviously I do lots of other projects to do with canals and railways and walks and things, as you're probably aware if you watch my channel frequently. After doing the Cotswold Way, I thought, well, I want to do something next year. And I thought, well, I live next to the Severn, how about doing bits of the Severn? And then it was that book, the second-hand book I referred to earlier on. It was in a charity shop window not far from where I live. I saw it there and it was almost like talking to me, if you know what I mean. I went in and bought it and read up about it because I didn't know much about the long distance path, and obviously having grown up in Gloucestershire, living very close to the River Severn, I thought that would be very appropriate to find the source of the river and then work my way back downstream to where it joins the Bristol Channel. So after crossing over this bridge, you have a choice. In fact, this sign here it's a little confusing because it indicates the Severn Way is down this way. Well, of course, it can't be downstream. But you also have this. It's this the Wye Valley walk. Now that kind of intersects at this part of the Severn Way, because the River Wye also rises on the same river as the same mountain, shall I say, Plymlimon, as the River Severn. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But yes, you have to watch that there. It looks like you have to go left. That'll be going downstream. But of course, like I said in this video, we're going upstream. It's the only time we'll be doing that. But yeah, so it's really important that you have a map with you. I wouldn't just rely on the old finger posts. I've been caught out on that before, relying on the Cotswold Way ones, and then suddenly they're either wrong or they disappear, and you have like a split of 3 or 4 tracks. But yeah, I just checked my OS map, and if you do have the OS map app, and if you're into walking, I strongly recommend it because it's excellent. But if you haven't got that, then of course you can use the paper maps. And again, I recommend that you get the plastic coated ones if you're out in this sort of terrain, because obviously we can come across wet conditions. But you can, you can create a route. So like today, I've created Severn Way 1 from the car park, and I've created the route, and I've saved it for my phone, so it's downloaded that part of the map. So here there is no signal, because unless you've bought the paper map with the OS map, it relies on a signal. Of course, there is no 4G in this terrain whatsoever. Now behind me here, it does actually look like a geography field lesson. I remember doing bits and pieces on the River Wye when I was doing geography O-level at school in Stroud. But yes, you have this, it's been really cut in here, so don't be thinking that this is just a shallow little stream. When the rain becomes heavy on the mountain there, this can become a raging torrent, and I would think this damage here has been done when we had the winter just a few months ago. Now it's just a trickle in the bed there, but it would have come up, and it's just, as you can see, it's sliced off a great big corner of the river here. And obviously a period of time it'll make deeper and deeper cuts, and eventually it'll actually take out the Severn Way itself, the footpath that I'm currently on. But there is a little shed up here, and I think it's a meteorological station, because as well as weirs, there are various points along the river where the flow of the water is constantly monitored. And you're probably thinking further down the river, as it goes through Shropshire, Worcestershire and Gloucestershire down to Bristol, that it's a natural flow. Well, in actual fact, it isn't a natural flow, because it is controlled. There is a reservoir, and I'll tell you more about that, in Wales, and they have gates there and sluices which controls the flow further downstream to try and reduce the impact of flooding. Now, during the course of doing the Severn Way series, I hope to answer some questions, many that I have myself. Although I've read books about it, there's still lots of places along the River Severn that I haven't explored, and so I'm going to find it equally as interesting. Perhaps you will too. The river, during the course of its history, has been a frontier, a battleground, a source of irrigation, and even a sewer. Hopefully those days are gone, but of course it still provides water for some 6 million people. Hence the name, the Severn Trent Water Company, of course. But we'll soon answer some of those of the way. And something I'll start with is telling you a little bit about Sabrina. Where does the name Sabrina come from? Well, it's actually christened thus by 2 Romans, one called Tacitus, T-A-C-T-I-D-U-S, I think, and the other one, I always find this difficult to pronounce, Ptolemy, that's P-T-O-L-E-M-Y. They christened it Sabrina, and there is a bit of a dispute about where that name originated from. Some of it is thought to have come from really old interest, pre the Roman Empire, before the Romans came here, because it means, Sabrina, or part of that word means sandy, and not at this part of the river, but further on down, certainly Bewdley, Worcester, and on down through Gloucester, etc. The river does have a sandy appearance because of the debris and the silt and the mud that it's collected along the way during the course of its journey, and it has that kind of brownish tinge to it. So that's perhaps part of the reason why, but that's not the full story. There's a story of the 5 sister spirits on Plymlimon, where we're headed to find the source of the River Severn. They had a father, the ocean. And one evening they decided the next morning to make their way to visit their father. Now the first sister to wake up was Virga, the River Wye, and she started making her way south to join her father underneath the country of Wales. Sabrina woke up next, and she decided to take a more leisurely route. She went eastwards before a little bird told her that her 3 other sisters had not yet awoken, but her older sister Varga had been making good progress, so she immediately started making her way to the south. Upon hearing this, the 3 remaining sisters, Riedel, Lifrac and Minac, decided to make their way on a much shorter journey westward into Cardigan Bay. The 3 larger of those rivers, of course the Severn, the Wye and the Riedel, are still commonly known in these parts as the 3 sisters. We'll be coming back to the story of Sabrina, joining the course of our route southwards after we've been to the source of the Severn here on West Country Wanderings along the Severn Way, because there are various statues, and there's one close by in the town, the park where I started doing the piece to camera earlier in today's video. We'll have a look at that possibly in part 2. You're probably thinking, where's my hat today? Well, it's forecast to be cloudy for the next few days, and I'll tell you more about the logistics of how I'm doing this filming in a moment. But it's forecast, there was forecast to be some rain, or light rain this afternoon, so I don't know if we'll get that. It's a little bit cloudy further on up at the top of the mountain, so it might rain on further on the way back, but so far so good. And I thought, because it's really cloudy and a lot of this part of the trek today is in the forest, then I thought I wouldn't probably need my hat because it's not a strong sun, but it'll probably make an appearance. Oh, certainly it'll make an appearance later on in the Severn Way series. What about the Welsh name for the river, Afron? Where does that come from? Well, the first part of it is Afron, A-F-O-N, which is the Welsh for a river, and the second part of it comes from the Welsh Frehaines, F-R-E-H-I-N-E-S, meaning queen, and together they mean queen of the rivers, which seems really, really appropriate to me for this wonderful and mighty river here. Yes, in terms of logistics of filming the Severn Way, well, it's quite a thing actually, as you can imagine, because of the distance. Now, the Cotswold Way was relatively straightforward, because every video I did on that and every trip I did was a day trip from home, because I live more or less in the middle of the Cotswold Way. It was easy to get all the places from there. But obviously the Severn Way, particularly this stretch here in Wales, this is mid-Wales. I suppose I'm not too far from South Wales, but mid-Wales is quite a trek. So I'm actually staying in a town called Welshpool, which is about 27 miles from where I've started the walk. And you're probably thinking, oh, couldn't you get somewhere a bit closer? Well, accommodation is quite limited in this part of the world, and so you have to go with where you can get the accommodation. We're just starting to climb now. I've just noticed the contours are starting to climb up. Severn is over there, and yeah, we're just heading up onto the mountain. But it's wonderful here. When I started off at the car park, because there's lots of other walks from there, it was quite a few people around, but now there's no one. I'm completely here on my own. Now here I noticed that the nature of the River Severn has changed. I've literally only come up a bit, another mile or so. The channel has become narrower, but it's also running faster because of the gradient. We're on a steeper gradient now. In fact, I'm climbing now, and you really get the sense that this is a mountain stream tumbling down from its spring, and we're making our way to its source. In terms of the terrain of the ground, it's generally pretty good. It's mainly fine pieces of stone, a little bit slaty here, so you have to watch your tread. Certainly haven't seen any mud whatsoever, like lots of the other walks I do on my channel. But yeah, obviously you need stout footwear, of course, and be prepared for rain and a map. But other than that, if you're coming here to walk along the Severn, enjoy it as I am. I really am. Although it's an absolute pleasure to make this. Really enjoy. Well, I enjoy all those things I make, because obviously they're things that interest me. But yeah, it's one big geography lesson, isn't it? So you can see there are other tributaries that have joined, little streams that have joined the river here, which is why it was stronger with more water in it and a wider channel when I set off from the car park some 2.5 miles ago now. And yeah, you get the real sense that it's lots of other streams, probably some have names, some don't, I guess, that feed into Hafren here to increase the flow of the water. And obviously it's a very mountainous area. We're in the mid Wales, I say. I think it. I started off my journey when I left Herefordshire, made my way up to a place called Rhyadr, which is in Powys, and it's also part of Wales called Radnorshire. Now, I'm not up with the history of shires and counties in Wales, because they forever, well, seem to me anyway, if you live in Wales, and please excuse me because I'm not so familiar with this country, but they seem to change. Now it seems like Radnorshire is within Powys, because we're now in what's known as Montgomeryshire, which is where the source of the Severn lies. Now the channel that the Severn is in is quite deep. All I'm getting now is, apart from being able to hear it gurgling down, you'll probably be able to hear it as well on the soundtrack, is just flashes of white where it suddenly drops down a gradient and you get like a small waterfall, I guess. But for the most part now I can't see it because it's in a gully just hidden there over to the right, apart from that bit I've just inserted there for you. So yeah, the nature of this has changed. I'm probably now three miles in, I guess, and it's the nature of the river here has changed completely from when I set off that car park some hour and a half or so ago. So it's just how the Severn Way is just joined up with again. It's just alongside me now, and yeah, you can see now how much smaller that river really is. The other thing I saw there was bluebells. Now where I live, the bluebells, I did the Gloucestershire woodland in the springtime. When did I make that now? Probably 5-6 weeks ago. They've all gone over there, but when I was driving over here, there's some more bluebells there as well by the banks of the Severn. They've all gone over, which means that the climate here is different. They would have started growing here later because of course it is colder due to the altitude. So that was the Blind Hafren Falls, and I've just noticed that when you reach that point, or rather when I reach that point, making my way back to the car of course, I won't include that in the video, but I'll probably do some of the filming to add into this mix making its way north, so there'll be other clips I can add in. You can actually go back on a separate route, so you can cross over the Severn now, as indeed we've done. So the Severn is now on my left, on your right of the screen. There it is. It's just started to rain here. It's only just light spots, but I'm also heading into the wood again, so that's handy. If it does get heavier, obviously I'll do less piece to camera, and obviously I'll film some additional bits on the way back. But I'm not just going to get my Mac out just yet. I was expecting this because it was looking cloudy, and of course we are gaining height, so it's inevitable really. Now we've just joined a track used by the forestry there. I think it's called Cymru Utilities. They run the wood here, or should I say the Hafron forest. It's a wonderful stream behind me there, so if I can do a close-up of that. We joined the track, so we've just come up to this track which is on a higher gradient. We don't follow the track around, and then we turn left. I say it's been a tremendous snow and hailstorm, hence my hair is completely soaked, jumper wet. I did have my waterproof on, well that got soaked as well, so I gave that a has stopped for the moment. I think it's going to start again before we make our way to the source of the River Severn, but it's wonderful here. I haven't seen another soul since I left the waterfalls down there. There hasn't been anyone else making their way up to this point. I'm just now making my way up to the summit, well not the summit if you like, but the source of the River Severn. It's just about a mile away from the mountain of Plymlimon, the summit of Plymlimon. In actual fact, there's an alternative route you can do. You can actually go up to Plymlimon. I can't remember the name of the car park. There's a car park, you can park there, walk to Plymlimon, and then make your way across to the source of the River Severn. Anyway, we're making our way across this way. It's just been torrential downpour of hailstones and snow. Probably might be able to make out some bits down here. I'll just include a clip of that. Sorry about the lens steaming up as well. It's been so much rain. It has stopped for a bit, but it'll probably come down a bit further before I get to the summit here alongside the River Severn, Hafron, in Paris in Wales. Well, I've come to the conclusion this is a place that doesn't stop raining. We're here. I made it. I'm sorry I couldn't do any pieces to camera on the way up, but I've had to set my coat off, and I don't like filming in the rain. It's still pouring down. This is it. This is the source of the River Severn. Plymlimon is over there. It's about another mile or so over that way before we get to the source there. When I came up here, I got caught in a heavy snow and hail shower. I'm absolutely drenched. I've waited here about 3/4 of an hour for it to stop raining, but it's showing no sign of stopping raining, and I do apologise for not being able to do pieces to camera on the way up any further. It's just too wet. Anyway, I've made it to the top. This is the source here. Do a quick bit of filming, and then I'm going to make my way, but you would have seen the other clips I've inserted. I will do a final piece of camera when I get back in the dry, hopefully back at the car park, so I'll see you back down there. But it's good to be up here, despite the weather. Just made it to get a feel that you've made it to the source of the River Severn. So I'm nearly back at the car park now, after making the descent back from the source of the River Severn. So this is kind of a debrief and a wrapping the video up. Nice, wonderful shelter here. In fact, this is the only shelter that I've seen on our route. So we've got 2 picnic tables here. I'll just do a spin round, insert that now so you can see it's under cover. So yeah, it was a bit of an interesting adventure, wasn't it? So I was not expecting snow and ice, and coming down with such ferocity. I was to say I got absolutely soaked. Certainly on the last mile and a half, making my way to the source of the River Severn. And I waited there for about 3/4 of an hour, nearly an hour before. I was hoping that the rain was going to stop. Now the ice and the snow stopped, and it did start to ease. But unfortunately it didn't stop raining, so the quality of the images, my piece to camera at the summit there, sorry, the spring there, the source of the Severn, was probably not the best quality that I would have liked, and also I'd like to have inserted some more images. It is a bit bleak up there. Obviously the weather as well makes it bleak, and it is full of peat bog, so it is a bit treacherous underfoot. Most of it, there are some slabs up there as well, so you've got some slabs that give you a indication of where you're going, but there's bits, 1 or 2 places where I had to nip around the slabs because they were completely underwater. They'd sunken into the bog itself, so it is a bit treacherous. So if you're coming to look at the source of the River Severn, then please be aware of that, and also be prepared for the weather suddenly changing from, well, cloudy to showers and then full-on snow and hail. And yeah, that was a bit of a shock. I must admit, it wasn't the ferocity that I hadn't really expected or planned for, but that's the way these things go sometimes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed part 1, looking for the source of the River Severn, here on the 7 Way series on West Country Wanderings. There'll be a part 2 coming soon. In fact, I'll be filming that tomorrow, but it'll probably be landing in about a week to 10 days on my channel, and I'll tell you all about that nearer the time. I hope you enjoyed it today. If you did, please consider a like, subscribe, or comment. Take care until next time on West Country Wanderings. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers now. Goodbye.